Welcome back to the Context Coaching Podcast. We are joined today by Bobby Tosetti, who is the head men's basketball coach at Hesperia High School down in Southern California, which is very big and large, so I can't pinpoint exactly where that is, but I'm sure Coach will help us figure that out as we begin. Welcome, Coach.
All right, man. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate everything you do with this deal, man. It's kind of taken off a little bit, and glad to be a part of it.
Well, thanks for jumping on, and glad that TB was able to connect us. But let's dive in and talk about your background as a coach. How'd you end up in the profession? What was the journey like? How'd you land your first coaching job and any subsequent ones? However that serves. Take us through that journey, right. Coach.
Well, so I was playing at a high school, played at Samuel Valley College for Jeff Oliver and John Smith, and then played there for 2 years for both those guys, and then ended up going down to Dominguez Hills, playing there for 2 years. And then when I was wrapping that up, our head coach, Larry Hauser, he talked me into sticking around for another year after I graduated in 2003. So I started coaching in 2003-04 season with him. Later on, he ended up moving up to Fresno. And then Coach Smith, John Smith, just got the head job at RCC. He hired me, worked there for 3 years. When I was 23 to 26, and I thought, man, this is great. I want to be a head coach. Thought I knew everything, kind of young and immature. So I dove into a high school job and just was totally unprepared. And then that summer, in between after I wrapped up my first year there, I was working at basketball camp at Cal State San Bernardino for Jeff Oliver, Paul Trevor, the head coach at Stanislaus. Trev actually, came up and was, hey, Booker Harris just took the ops job at San Diego. You'd be interested in coming on staff here. So I jumped at that opportunity. Just thought it was a great lead to kind of be around those guys. They had it going a little bit at San Bernardino, won a couple of titles in a row, and just wanted to be a part of it. So ended up getting on there with them. And then 10 years later, Oliver resigned at San Bernardino, and just my wife was pregnant and didn't really know what we were going to do. Didn't know what avenue I was going to take. And then got a call, random. Got a call from my now boss at Hesperia. And it's funny, man, life-changing opportunity that we got. Didn't know it at the time to go down to high school level. But with my wife being pregnant, thought that I really needed to get a full-time job. Had 2 other kids. Needed to be able to make some money, have some medical insurance, things like that, still paying the same retirement really as the CSU. So I jumped at that, and then, been there 4 years, had pretty good success. We've had 9 guys play college basketball. And so it's good, man. We are in the process of kind of, I don't want to say rebranding our program, but definitely changing some things that we didn't like, and just kind of regrouping and refocusing going forward.
Love it. Great segue. I want to jump all the way back to the beginning, because you made a comment that I think serves us well in the intention of this podcast, which is to be a digital database of mentorship. And you said you took a high school job and thought you had all the answers and realized you were totally unprepared. I would like to peel back the layer of the onion there and identify very specifically what you realized you were unprepared for, even though you had been groomed to do essentially that. Can we identify a few things to maybe help people like, yo, these are the things you need to be aware of that were way over my head?
I mean, every avenue, from just building the relationships with the kid. I mean, a mature relationship with the student athlete, contacting people for fundraising, having the relationship with admin, having the relationship with other teachers on campus, the parent-coach dynamic that we all know exists. Just a practice plan, being able to call a timeout effectively, being able to have a voice in the timeout that everybody knew was yours. I mean, just every aspect of kind of running a program, I was unprepared for. I mean, there's so many details of it, and I mean, once I had to take a step back from that and remove myself from that situation, it was like, man, it was eye-opening. And then getting the opportunity to work with O and Trev, it was like, oh man, this is how you do it. This is how two guys work together. Those two guys work so well together, and being able to watch those guys and learn learn from them was incredible. So,
okay, well, let's take that then, right? You gave us a nice list: relationships that are mature with kids, fundraising, parent coach dynamics, practice plans, relationships with other teachers, all of the things that have nothing to do with basketball. And we talk about that often on the show, which is what percentage of coaching actually deals with your sport versus the other things that take up that time. Mm-hmm. And since you provided a nice list, and now you're back 4 years into this and going through a period of rebranding, as you called it, or reinventing yourself, right, how would you say you attack each of those now, with the benefit in hindsight of experience, where you somewhat fell on your face, went and got to see how it should be done, and now you're back in the mix? Can you point to a couple of those specific deals and say, hey, when I was at the first job, this is how I navigated that and why it didn't work, and here's how I'm now navigating that at my current site?
Well, at the first job I had, man, it was just me. I had a JV coach that would come on, and we just had two programs, just like the school I have now. We have the JV and we have the varsity. But from when I got the call, got the job, accepted the job, I started building a staff. I thought that was the number one most important thing. Had a former player, was able to get another coach hired, and then we added another kid who just graduated from college, who's been unbelievable for us in the time that he's been there. And I thought that building a foundation and building a staff was, I think, number one. And again, I didn't want this job to be a job where I was in a couple of years and then taking off. I wanted to build something. I wanted to really lay a foundation, if you would. And we were on that track, and then the pandemic hit. And I think that changed a lot of the way our kids worked. I think it changed a lot of the way our coaches viewed things. And that's why I think we're getting back to our roots, if you would, and kind of establishing who we are and what we exactly want to be as a basketball program.
So let's talk about staffing. And I interviewed Leo Lopez a while ago, who is the athletic director at De La Salle, who many people know where that is. And when I asked him, what are the things that you need to most do when you take over a program, and he was very deliberate and very clear: staff and schedule, staff and schedule, staff and schedule. So in that, when you mentioned that you had two levels, you had basically two different programs. Sounds like you figured out some vertical integration and how to structure that and how to get everybody rowing in the same direction. But let's dig a little deeper on that and maybe list a few things that, hey, okay, day one on the job, if you had to start over, you went and found a staff. Great. What else did you do? What are the things that are top of the priority pyramid that people need to be aware of?
Well, I think for me, looking at it through my lenses, I didn't want a guy that was going to be somebody to come in and just agree with whatever I said. I wanted somebody that's going to give me some pushback, and I was able to get that. I also didn't want anybody to view the game the same way I do. In terms of, I wanted them to be able to give me some different feedback. Now, I talked to a handful of guys who I was interested in hiring, and I knew right away that it just wasn't going to work out. You kind of get that feel. And then was able to hire a dude by the name of Billy Morton. Sorry, he's really, really established, really turned around our strength and conditioning program, and really, really pushed us through to better ourselves maturity-wise, better our kids from a personal standpoint. And then we hired a guy named John Roach, who just got done playing at Concordia down in Irvine. And he's been incredible in terms of the player development aspect. And I think we were touching all bases from the X's and O's standpoint. And then to couple that with they're just really, really good dudes, it's like, man, it's the best of both worlds on that. So
as you think through where this program grows in your rebrand, that's the word we're going to use, even though it's probably not the one you wanted to use. Right. You talked about player development. You talked about strength and conditioning. You talked about making sure that you are meeting the needs of your student athletes where they are. How do you see those roles evolving, and what's still missing that you're looking to fill?
Man, that's a good question. So I think that we're trying to gain, total like student athlete experience. We're trying to push that. One of our things, we got an ABCD thing. A is for accountability. We want to make sure our kids are held accountable. Then we want them to know they belong. That's what the B stands for. C is care. We want everybody to know that we care, that that we're there, we're caring for them, and then we want them to dream, because we want these guys to have big dreams. We want these guys to be able to, and we want to put them in a situation where they can fulfill those dreams and they can get kind of grow as people. And I think that's our as a coach, slash educator, I think that's our biggest thing is we put, and I think I've done it before in the past, is put a cap on what these guys can do. And I know you guys talk quite a bit about transactional and transformational relationships on this show, and that's something that I really took to heart, and just want these guys to know that we're going to try and help them transform their lives into acting out those dreams and playing those dreams out in their future lives.
Well, let's go there for a second. And I want to do so in the framework, in the context of you going back to college. So the way I understand your journey, finished playing, started coaching college, went to high school, back to college, back to high school, right? So you've had a couple of times where you've been in and out. And I want to ask something that maybe you've thought of, maybe you haven't, but why do you feel that you were not prepared the first time, but then after going back, you were prepared the second time? And I don't want to necessarily lead you with this question, but what aspect of that had to do with paying more attention because you had not had a great experience and you needed to learn more, versus having better teachers? That's not fair, because I know how good Coach Hauser was and some of these other people, but it's like, why do you think you weren't prepared the first time and you were the second time? What do you think led to that?
It definitely wasn't. It was all me. It was all maturity from my aspect. I mean, I was, pretty, I don't know. I like to think I know the game, but it's the X's and O's. That's the easy part. And I think a lot of people sit in the stands and they don't see it like they see the basketball side, but like for guys that watch film and guys that really study it, that's the easy part. It's all the extra stuff that makes your program what it is. The relationship building, your admin, the other teachers on campus, the support you can kind of build, the parent coach relationship, what that looks like. I mean, there's so many different views of it. I learned so much from Coach Smith, from John Smith. Learned so much from Coach Hauser. I mean, I learned so much from any assistant coach I had. But I think at the time, at 25, 26 years old, you don't really know. You don't really understand it, and you think you do. You think you have all the answers under the sun. But I mean, it's a challenge, and it's a grind when you are the guy and you get in there and you're really trying to play it all out.
Yeah, and I think there's an aspect of it as well that you've heard on the pod a million times, is until you're sitting in the seat, like, it doesn't matter what prep work you do, it's not real. And Coach Smith and Coach Hauser and Oliver and Trev could have sat you down and said, here's what you're going to do on this day, this day, this day. But at the same time, you still got to go through those trials and tribulations. And I think that's important for people to note, that you're never going to be ready. And even in your second time through, you were more prepared, but different environment, different culture, different things you got to figure out amongst the staff and your relationships on campus. And I think it's important. It's okay. People, like, that's fine. Who are the people in your support system that you can call on, right? And I think you mentioned it in staffing. You were seeking dissenting opinion in your second time as a head coach. You didn't want people that agreed with you.
Right.
How do you choose to go down that route and still manage them in a way where it's not a constant battle and conflict that is playing out in front of your kids?
Yeah, that's a challenge, but I think that's based like me and Billy are my assistant. we're the same age, so he's got a ton of what does he always call it, private sector experience. So he's had a ton of experience out in the professional world. I'm not saying teachers aren't professional or anything like that, but just business world type of mentality. So he's been around a lot, so his maturity level is extremely high. And then JT Roach, he's mature for his age, and his knowledge is such. But I think communication, to answer that, is communication. Like I constantly tell these guys, like, hey, give me some feedback, as the game is playing out. Say we need to make an adjustment, we're getting torched on something, we need to do something different. And it may not be a sub, it may be a timeout, it may be a quick sub, give an explanation to a kid. Hey, do you understand it? Yes, go back in the game. And I think that those guys, I think we've gained that trust over the last few years, that I trust what they have to say and they trust what I have to say as well.
Let me ask a more challenging question that maybe you haven't thought about. How are you preparing your assistant coaches to be head coaches? What are you specifically doing in an intentional way that is helping them not be where you were the first time through?
It's a heck of a question. So I went down to the Buzz Williams Get Better clinic down in Texas last October, and he had a list. He called it his bucket list, and each one of the people on his staff, and I know it's Texas A&M, and they got 95 people in their basketball support staff, but he's given each one of these guys, and it's just on a simple spreadsheet, and he's got what they're in charge of, and they're the head coach of that specific thing. So, and I try to play to our guys' strengths, and I think my assistants' strengths. And just looking at it and kind of reflecting back, it's like, let me work on some things that I'm not as good at, and let me help those guys with some stuff that they're not as good at. So some of those buckets, if you would, using Coach Williams's phrase, may change. Their responsibilities may change, and then just being in constant communication with them, and kind of letting them grade me on things, and in turn letting me grade them on things.
Yeah, it's a great approach. I think I often say with my assistant here, it's like, I'm bringing you into all of these things because if I drop dead tomorrow, you need to be able to run this thing. Yeah. And there are things that you don't get to see until you're dealing with them. So come watch while I'm assigning officials, watch while I'm doing hiring paperwork, all of these different things. And I think the more that we can expose our staff to is not only hedging our bets to make sure we're covered on the back end, but it's also making sure that they are more ready than we think that they need to be when they get into that role.
Right.
What would you say after all this time and being in different programs is the best thing you do in your program that has the largest ripple effect on culture, but more importantly, it's something that will go with you no matter where you go, no matter what sport you're coaching? This is what we're going to do because it has such a transformational effect on the culture of the group.
I mean, that kind of goes back to what Coach Smith, that was Coach Smith's biggest strength when my time at RCC with him, and he carries it over with him into, now he's at SLO, and just building the team, building everything. We used to do all kinds of team building events, and before the pandemic, we did a couple every year, various different things, and we got away from it. And I thought that was something that last year we were 18-11, and that was our worst year we had since I've been at Hesperia. And I thought that it was the cohesiveness of our group. It wasn't a talent thing. It wasn't, and not to sound arrogant or anything, I don't think it was a coaching thing. I think it had a lot to do with the fact that guys didn't understand roles, guys weren't bought in, guys weren't a team, they weren't together, they weren't a collective group. They were just kind of floating. And if we could have done a better job of managing that, then some of those 2-point losses, 3-point losses, things like that could have went the other way. And obviously won games that we, lost. So we've started to address that. We changed our summer, our staff, we got together through the spring, we had different summer plans, changed those dramatically, ended up attending a couple of team camps, had some overnight events where we stayed, really got the guys together, did a bunch of random team building things that we did. One in particular, it was funny because we were down at Point Loma's team camp, and I packed up a bunch of cardboard, 3 rolls of duct tape, and 3 box cutters. And we went down to the beach, and the guys are sitting there, and they're carrying all the stuff down there. And, we get down there, and they're like, what are we doing with this stuff? What are we doing? I say, hey, this group over here, you four, and here's your guys' supplies.
Build a boat.
Let's build a boat and see what happens. And I was surprised because it had been a couple of years since we did anything like that. And we had no pushback at all. Guys started working together. And that carried us over, and I thought that we played well, ended our summer on a high note, and then we're just looking to next week we'll get back in the gym and we'll pick up right where we left off. I think so.
Yeah, I mean that's a specific thing that I think is great. I actually shot Tyler a video of that the other day, and we were laughing about it, the boat building competition and trying to paddle across the pool. But I want to go back and challenge you a little bit on something you said when you said it wasn't coaching, but then you proceeded to talk about guys not bought into their roles or not knowing their roles is what I think you actually said. And I would say that role definition, I think, is probably the most important thing we do as coaches and as leaders.
Right.
And how would you say you manage that, and where do you think you fell short that you're going to address this year to make sure that, hey, this is your role and it's your job to star in your role while you can prepare for the role that you want, which may or may not come?
Simple. One word, man, that's communication. Just being able to address it, being able to address it and follow through with it. Is the biggest thing. And, me as a leader of our program, I thought I fell short of that this past season. We had a ton of talent. We were young. We had 2 freshmen on the varsity level that are really, really talented, 2 sophomores that are really talented, a handful of juniors that are really talented. And we just couldn't collectively get through to them. And I thought that the biggest thing was, like the first word I said was communication.
Yeah.
Did a poor job of it.
Yep. And I think there's often a resistance, let's say, early as we are figuring out our coaching identity as to how clear, how defined, how restricted, let's say, do we want to clarify some of our players' roles? Because I ran into this at 24, my first time as a coach, like, I don't want to restrict what they might be able to do.
Yeah.
And then we go and, get pasted by a guy that's been coaching for 35 years. I'm like, yo, how do you get them to do X, Y, and Z? He's like, I have no problem telling guys what they can and can't do. And it was like light bulb moment to the point where, I learned from Coach Katz, who, just retired at Sac State earlier in the year. It's like he lines guys up on the baseline and tells them, you're a rebounder, you're a get back guy, you're this. And it's like, I've taken from that to where it's crystal clear. Yeah. And it has not only enhanced our ability to have traditional success in the win-loss column, but it has also enhanced individual athletes' ability to thrive in the role that is carved out for them. How far down that rabbit hole have you gone at this point, and where do you think you can still make some growth in that communication of how you define roles?
So it's funny. A couple of years ago, we were really we weren't extremely talented. We had everybody bought it. Everybody understood their role. Everybody understood what they were doing. And we as coaches, myself, 2 assistants, we were definite, like, hey, this guy, you're a catch and shoot guy. Hey, you're so elusive on the boards. You fly in there, get an O board, get a putback, gain us an extra possession, so on and so forth. And I don't know why that slipped through the cracks this year. That communication slip through the cracks. And again, that's part of the reflective time of the off season of like, man, and I really believe that was one of our biggest things, biggest hurdles, and what held us back. But to answer your question, sorry, I've always been a guy to go one-on-one with kids on situations like that. I know, not playing, but coaching with Oliver and Trev, they're a little more outspoken, and they're going to tell you specifics, have some nice choice words, maybe a funny line here and there to go with it. But they were definite about, hey, this is what you do. You're a screener. You're gonna handle the ball. You're gonna do this. You're gonna do that. And whether the kid likes it or not, they really don't care. Where I have, maybe it's a fault, I don't know, but I'd rather talk to the kid because I have no clue. Well, at the time, you don't have a clue of what the kid's thinking. And then it's like, does this kid's personality fit? Can he absorb it? Does he have big enough shoulders to absorb that? Who knows? So I've always been a one-on-one guy with situations like that. And then I think when you have kids that don't buy in, then you got to pull them back in, and you got to reel them back in, and you got to constantly communicate and pound that role into them.
Yeah, I think it's important to figure out who you are and how you want to do things. And I would also say it's important that whatever roles you carve out for your athletes, their teammates are keenly aware of what those roles are as well.
Yeah.
Because it's like going to play pickup and you got the guy taking a bunch of terrible shots and people aren't enjoying playing because they don't know what he's going to do on any given possession, versus everybody knows what people's roles are and they can then play together. And I think it's something that we don't put enough time into as coaches as a generality. I know some people do, but I mean, we're as specific as, hey, you're a driver, you're a shooter, you're a ball changer. Well, what's that? That means you pass. You get it, you pass to the next guy. Well, can I shoot? Yeah. Every time he misses, that's a pass to you. Go get it off the glass. Right. And it's like ultimately figuring out that how do you set these guys up for success by acknowledging your fear as a coach. Like, I don't want to undermine this kid's development. I don't want to limit them, but seeing a short-term, I mean, it's like what you're doing with your coaches. It's like, you're not handing the keys over to the guy on day one. It's like, no, you're going to go and show me that you can do this area. You can put a scout together. Okay. Then I'll let you control fundraising. Right. So there's a similar aspect of that I don't think is painted that clearly until you figure it out on your own. And the more that we can not just encourage, but empower coaches, like carve up roles the same way you do in your home, in your coaching staff, for your team, and put people in the right seats, as Jim Collins would say. Get the right people on the bus, put them in the right seats.
Yeah, it hits it right on the head. And I think, just for me, I got the communication aspect is what I've been working on and trying to address and everything. So, because I think communication solves so many of your small little details.
Yeah, for sure. And I would offer one more thing for the listeners to use with your athletes. Fair is not equal. And what is fair does not mean that everybody's going to get the same thing, right? So if we're trying to be successful and win games, everybody doesn't need to be shooting the same amount from the same distances, because everybody's got a different skill set. And it's okay to name that. You don't need me performing open heart surgery on somebody when I'm not prepared to do so. Let me pivot to how things have shifted for you going to the high school. You're 4 years in. As a college coach, essentially your kids are college basketball players for 365 days a year. In high school, they may or may not, hopefully they do, play other sports, have other interests. How do you embrace that and support them in those endeavors in a way that allows them to thrive for you by fulfilling these other obligations that they're working on, that others may perceive as, hey, this is taken away from my time?
Right. Well, I think who was it the other day? I was listening and you guys were talking about burnout and kids being burnt out of of
Probably everybody on the pod, because that's my soapbox. So
we have a kid this year who I guess has been, all his life, he's been a phenomenal 7-on-7 football player, but he never played, never put on helmet, never put on shoulder pads. It's like, dude, like, get out there. Well, our football coach is phenomenal. He's a big time motivator, big time team builder, he's just an incredible dude to talk to. And so Casey, we get Don, the young man, he's out there playing with Casey, and Casey's just like, man, this guy's incredible, catches everything. I mean, this kid's 6'3", 6'4", length, got great frame, great athlete. I mean, he's got all the tools to be a great big time wideout. And I mean, I don't know much about football, but this kid's got all of it. And Casey and I encourage Don to go out there and play, because I know the guy he's going to play for is got his best interests. Don's going to take something from that and put it in our program, and and not do it intentionally. It's just going to kind of organically happen. And I encourage it. I mean, I want our guys to play multiple sports. I want our guys. I grew up, I didn't even play basketball until I got to high school. And that's a complete other story, but I was a baseball guy growing up and loved it. I mean, I still would rather watch a MLB game than an NBA game. And, it's relaxing to me. I enjoy it. I love the strategy that goes behind baseball, but I was a baseball guy going all the way through, school. We got to high school, enjoyed playing basketball, could shoot a little bit, had fun. And, next thing you know, I was done playing baseball and on to basketball. But I think it's good, especially when you have a good group of coaches like we do at our school, that's going to encourage the right things. They're going to push the young men, young women to do, to motivate them to do better, to kind of complete them as a whole, to be able to, the student athletes to take something from those coaches' personalities.
Well, I look at it as well in the fact that you said you had 2 freshmen on your team. Is that correct?
Yeah.
How much are those 2 freshmen going to be listening to you 4 years from now, if they are not around other people who are coaching them?
Well, I chuckle because one left, so he won't listen to me at all. So, but the other one, the other one is this kid's got a chance, man. And I think, and again, it's one of those situations where it's like, the month of July, I was skeptical about being in the gym. I after our dead period was over with, I went up, worked him out a couple of days, did some different things, but it's like, man, he's in his AAU right now, went and supported him in that, went and supported a couple other guys that play. But it's like, and in that role, I'm trying to view from just a support thing. Hey man, you played well. Hey, you did this. I don't want to be the coach guy. I don't want them to hear the X and O. Man, why didn't you drive it and kick it there? Why did you shoot? That was a terrible shot. I don't, it was all positive. I didn't want any of that to be negative. And I think that it's hard. It's, Coach Hauser was on us all the dang time. And it was, I vividly remember it in a timeout, just, bad body language and just like, dude, this guy, man, just enough.
It doesn't matter how good you are. At some point you become Charlie Brown, and the more voices that are mission aligned with what you're trying to teach that can influence our kids, the better off they are. It's the same as like why they have different teachers in school, right? It's like, it's not the same person teaching every subject matter. Let me ask this question, because you're in a unique position as a special ed teacher. How would you say that experience informs your coaching and things that you've learned in the classroom with the clientele that you serve, that you reflect back on your coaching career and you're like, man, had I known this then, this would be super helpful. And I'm actually applying this today based on methodology of being a special ed teacher.
Patience, number one. That is really, really helped me. It's, kids don't get it first crack. And where, you're coaching at Cal State San Bernardino and you put a play in, guys are going to get it. You say, hey, come off this back screen, do this. We're going to back screen, down screen right here. They get it. Well, a high school kid, man, their brain's on fire. So you got to constantly rep it and rep it and rep it and rep it. And I think that has really like helped me understand it better. You know, when I teach world history and we're talking about World War II, and it's like kid asks a question, it's like, huh? Like that doesn't, no, dude, that doesn't pertain to that. That was World War I. But it was like, well, at least he's relating it to a war, you know, and then you're kind of taking it off on that kind of I don't want to say spectrum, but taking off on that avenue. But I think the patience definitely has really, really helped me in teaching what we want done on the court, and teaching what we want done in the weight room, and teaching how we want these kids to act on campus. Everything, you know. So
how would you say that? And I'm going to use this word not in the way that it's traditionally used in kind of putting kids in boxes, but learning differences plays into how you teach. And when I say learning differences, kids that are more literal than conceptual, right? Kids that are visual input preference kids or auditory input preferences. How do you see that being played out on your team, and how do you adjust to meet them where they are versus, no, I'm just going to pound this into submission. At some point, you're going to figure it out.
Yeah, we have a big time visual learner on our team who's got to see it and see it and see it. And he knows it too. And he can kind of self-regulate it, and where he'll step off the court and he'll watch it. And it's like, hey man, you got to get a rep, dude. At some point you got to get a rep. And he's like, and now I understand it. And it's like, okay, hey, he can take his time. He'll gain his reps. We have that trust. We have that understanding. He'll get in, he'll get his rep in, and then move on. We have kinesthetic learners who just have to do it and 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 do it. And it's like, hey man, what do you mean you haven't gotten it yet? And it's like, coach, I'm not comfortable with it yet. Can we do this 5-on-0 again? Yeah, sure, no problem. You know, and it's like, but my body language can't change. It has to be upbeat. It can't go like, all right, man, we're gonna spend a little bit more time in practice on this. It's got to be, all right, hey, no problem. Let's snap right to it. Hey, let me get 4 guys running with, you know, so and so, and then we get our reps in that way.
Would you say that you have become more aware of that in your role as a teacher, or is that something that just over the years of experience you've kind of figured out in coaching?
Nah, the light bulb definitely didn't go on for me until I got in the classroom. Because, and I say that because like coaching at the college level, you know, most of the kids we're getting are from, they've been taught the game pretty well. So now it's like we can continue it. But now we're doing a little bit more advanced stuff, and it's like there's a delay. Well, why is there a delay? Where I would have never looked back and been like, okay, this guy needs X, Y, and Z to be able to understand this. Where, you know, another kid just gets it right away, no problem. And I think it's definitely being in the, you know, especially a classroom, has definitely made me more aware to when you translate it to the basketball court.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's also as a parent of 3, sounds like you're similarly set up, but they're all different, right? And my eldest is a super literal kid. My middle one is super conceptual and just like, whatever, I'll figure it out. And then my younger one's kind of a combination of the two. And it's like trying to figure out how to teach one versus the other when you're teaching the same content. It's like, there's an aspect of like, you got to check yourself on what's wrong with you. When it's not, it's like, hey, how do I need to adjust to instruct this so that you can receive it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Let me ask this question. And you're kind of 4 years into this thing. You had a COVID pause like the rest of us there. But what would you say you have most recently changed your mind on from a coaching standpoint, where I used to be over here and now I'm here and here's why? And I'm talking about like the last month. You just all of a sudden had another light bulb go on, or you read up on something and you convinced yourself differently. And really, coach, it's a growth mindset question, which often we get in a rut of how we like to do things, but how are we constantly trying to push ourselves to grow?
I think that growing, well, for me, it's pushing myself to where like I'm uncomfortable, and being able to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Some of the things that we talked about earlier that don't really play into my personality kind of make me uncomfortable. I need to be able to still perform in for example, the deal about like addressing guys' roles. And being able to tell a kid, hey, you're doing this while this other kid's doing that, and then have the whole group understand what they're doing, what each kid is doing. So then that can grow on them, and essentially be better for us. But I think being uncomfortable and being able to perform while you're uncomfortable is something that is gotta, I don't know, I don't want to say I have to improve on, but something that I should, look at getting better at.
What about something that's not basketball related? Something that you've pivoted where you once stood?
Started reading more. Started reading a lot. Man, this year I probably read more books than I have ever in my life. Finished the Courage is Calling book by Ryan Holiday. That was really good. Atomic Habits, I'm almost done with. And then I just picked up a Mitch Albom book. What the heck's the name of it? It's A Stranger in the Boat. So looking forward to reading that one. And found it at Costco, man. $9. I was pumped. So
what's it called?
Let me go grab it so I know exactly what it is. The Stranger in the Lifeboat.
Stranger
Mitch
Lifeboat. All right, nice. I have to circle back on that one and see how it is.
Yeah. Kind of stole that from being down at that clinic in Texas with Buzz Williams. That dude reads like nobody's business, man. That dude is always reading. He posts all the stuff on Twitter. He takes incredible notes on all that stuff. I mean, he was nice enough to share some of that stuff with us down there at that clinic, man. And it was great. So
awesome.
Kind of stole that from him.
All right, let me wrap with this.
Uh-huh.
What is the best thing or something, let's not say the best thing, that you have appropriated and used yourself from a basketball perspective that did not come from a basketball observation, meaning you saw it at tennis practice or softball or somewhere else that all of a sudden you're like, hey, we need to do that? Another way to think about it, what have you learned watching other coaches that are not in your discipline that you have been able to apply to enhance you and your program?
Yeah, so I was out at football the other day watching those guys, and we just hired a new football coach, assistant named Vinny Fazio. His dad coached with the Raiders for a while and did some different things. Man, the guy's incredible, but just kind of how his demeanor and kind of how he carries himself, kind of how he is with the kids. I think that's something that I can piggyback with and kind of learn from him. I don't know if that's answering your question specifically, but
there is no wrong answer. Here's where I struggle, and you've heard this on the episodes, is I think we tend to get tunnel vision thinking we can only become a better coach watching the discipline that we coach. And I'm fortunate enough to have a pool outside my office. I get to watch swimming. I get to watch water polo, and I get to think about how to apply those things. And often I don't think we downplay the effectiveness or the ability of coaches that are not in our discipline. We just don't focus on it. So how are we thinking outside the box versus, well, I have to go to this basketball clinic to get better as a basketball coach? No, you don't. Like, there's plenty of different ways to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. That clinic that I went down to Texas A&M with Buzz Williams, it was all about, the name of it was Get Better. And it wasn't any basketball at all. It was all about leadership. It was all about, I mean, it was incredible. So, I mean, I would highly recommend that to anybody.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you calling in today and taking the time to get with us. I know I had to pivot with you at the last minute, cover for our boy at camp, but thanks for getting on and spending the time.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.